When I was younger, my brother Aaron and I used to wrestle, and this was like in our teen years. And so while he's my younger brother, he was a lot bigger than me at that point. And so I can remember being pretty scrappy and aggressive, and yet there's no way that he was giving it his all, because he absolutely could have hurt me and ended the fight really quickly, but he never did in my memory. So he was a really gracious wrestling partner. Why am I telling you this? Well, I've been wrestling with the story of Jacob wrestling with God, and I don't fully understand what happened in this little story, but there are some things that I take away from it that I hope can be an encouragement to you. Jacob is heading back into Canaan, into the promised land with his family, and they are at a river, and he sends his wives and his children and their possessions over first, and he stays on the other side. And it's night, and this is where the story gets kind of weird, and I really don't fully understand it. But this is in chapter 32, verse 24. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, "Let me go, for it is daybreak." But Jacob replied, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked him, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. Then the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob said, "Please tell me your name." But he replied, "Why do you ask me my name?" Then he blessed him there. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "It is because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." I don't know if you're in a season of wrestling with God right now, but I know that in my own seasons of wrestling, I often feel like I'm somehow in the wrong. I shouldn't be wrestling with God. Like, wrestling with God is an indication that my faith isn't strong enough. And while that might actually be the case, I take encouragement in knowing that in this story, it's God who initiates the wrestling, and the outcome is strengthened faith and blessing and transformation. Here, Jacob, up until this point in the story, is a bit of a jerk, honestly. He deceives, and he is selfish, and anytime, when he's talking about God, he refers to God as the God of his father and the God of Abraham. And there's something almost distant about his relationship with God. But at this point, God comes to him, not in a dream as he has in the past, but he comes to him in person and fully engages in wrestling. And he allows Jacob to give it his all, to put it all in and wrestle fully with God. And again, I'm sort of confused by this story. Is it real? Did he fully physically wrestle with God? I know this isn't happening for us. When we wrestle with God, it's not a physical altercation. But I still think that we are invited to really give it our all, knowing that God is a gracious wrestling partner. He absolutely could have fully defeated Jacob, but that was never the intention. The fact that he can just lay his hand on his hip and knock it out of its socket shows us that God could have just completely wiped Jacob out. But again, that wasn't the intention. The intention was to allow Jacob to fully wrestle with God in order for God to provide him with blessing and transformation. One of the really neat things about this is that after this point, in the next chapter, Jacob, now Israel, sets up an altar and calls it, this is like where the God of Israel is. He claims God for his own, and after this wrestling match, he has a new, transformed, and stronger faith. If you feel like you are in a time of wrestling with God, I would really encourage you to give it your all and know that God is a gracious, gracious, loving opponent. And his intention is not to defeat you. You might come away humbled and maybe slightly bruised like Jacob did. But ultimately, God's intention is to bring you closer to him, to bless you, and to bring you transformation. And so I pray that in our wrestling, we would really be drawn close to God, that we would come to know him, and that we would allow him in those moments of wrestling to transform us and bless us.